Loudr gang hang question and answer session? Sure. All right, welcome to the Loudr hang. I did. I'm responsible for this. Hi, guys. I think we should all have to say our names, every single one of us, so that we can be really intimate. And the questions that we then therein ask won't be nearly as awkward. Let's start over here. Yep. That's Ethan. Who are you, sir? Spencer. All right, let's go back one. What do you do, Ethan? We're going to do this with everybody. Cool. That's true. Ethan ports video games, including Fez, which is a great game. Spencer, what do you do?
Composer and sound designer.
Nice. What do you compose? Music? Sweet. How about you guys? Names. Nice. Awesome. Ever designed any really cool costumes? Oh. Wow. Okay, that's sick. All right, guys. Drew. Oh yeah. Hi, Emily. Nice to meet you guys. Yep. Oh. We read about you all the time. All right, back a row. Nice. That's you. Oh, it's cool. I just met these people. Opera and costumes. Wow. All right, Sean, who are you? I thought I saw you a few times. Yikes. Oh, awesome. It's just raining opera nerds here. I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna back that up. You back there, you can't escape the fun. Okay. Very nice. Who is this person? Who are you? What's your name? I'm being very serious. Yeah, it happened.
We're having an intimate gathering.
This is Patty. She's being shy. She plays violin. What else do you do, Patty? Music stuff. Cool. Who are you? Sweet. Hello. Welcome. You should. Awesome.
Who are you?
Oh yeah, we have names too. Yeah, okay, Jesse.
I'm Jesse. I am largely in charge of all of the customer support at Loudr, so chances are if you've ever sent an email to Loudr, you've probably had to deal with me at some point.
I'm Josh. I am the resident composer, but I program all the stuff that you guys break.
I'm Amanda. I'm the designer, and since we're going about it this way, anything you look at with Loudr, I did.
I'm Sebastian. My goodness, what do I do? I do a little bit of everything. Right now, we're gonna shift out of necessity here. Yes. I do a lot of the lot of licensing. I do a lot of distribution. If your stuff is on any store, it probably went through me at some point, so that's exciting. I listen to all the music. That's good.
We work with music publishers, and these people all have like, you know, fax machines and what kind of printer was that we had? Yeah, dot matrix printers and like old school technology, and it's our responsibility to sort of force them into the internet age gently but firmly. So CBAS is in charge of a lot of optimizations on our end that allow us to send things in very archaic formats with very little work on our end because we have the power of technology. I don't understand why other people don't use it. Yeah.
Some publishers and some companies that we deal with, and I'm surprised that one of them does not have an email. I was just sort of taken aback a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's 2014. This was last year, and you don't have an email. Okay. Well, let me know what your fax number is, and I'll send you a link.
Facts.
Japan especially loves the fax machine. It's like their favorite thing. So like
It's like mandatory.
you get much better results sending faxes to Japanese companies with like nicely worded cover letters instead of like trying to email people.
Cool. So we work with a lot of different kind of people. We work with musicians, we work with publishers, songwriters, with the labels. We work with the distributors like Spotify and iTunes. So we do a little bit of everything, and we wanted to just kind of get together and have you guys ask us questions. Anything you guys want to know about what we do, anything you guys want to know about music publishing, about copyright law, about moving files from one server to another. It's awesome. So,
And also about like, you know, music rights as far as being a cover song musician, being a remixer, being a video game music composer, things like that.
absolutely.
Stuff like that.
Cool. Who's got the first question?
I don't think there are any sexy parts of copyright law. No, the compulsory license is pretty sexy. So there's a provision in U.S. copyright law, and not all countries have this, but in U.S. copyright law, you can create your own cover version of a work, and as long as you follow a specific and archaic set of, you know, sort of hidden rules almost, the person who owns the content cannot say no. They can't deny you that license as long as they've had a chance to release their thing and you've fulfilled a bunch of other requirements. I can go into this if anybody is interested, where it's not like secret information. I would love everybody to understand how to get their own licenses. All right, so the work has to be officially released in the US by the copyright holder. Once they've done that, you can prepare a form that has to have very specific information on it, the title of the work, the timing of the work. It has to say at the top, notice of intent to distribute, notice of intent to obtain a compulsory license to distribute phono records. And it has to say like exactly that wording or it's not valid. You have to say like what kind of things you're doing, whether you're making CDs, whether you have digital downloads, various things like that. You also have to give information about your company or, you know, artist entity, what your fiscal year is, who's going to be profiting from the phono record, you know, at least people who have made like 25% of the income, you know, if it's your game company or it's you personally, or maybe the recording ensemble that did it. So preparing all that information, you send this notice to them, which has to be sent by either certified or registered mail, or you have to somehow prove the date on which you sent it. Like you can send it UPS or something, but then UPS has to like verify that, okay, on such and such date, you know, we knocked quietly twice, whispered, hey, are you there, and then left. And once you do that, you've obtained a compulsory license, and that means that monthly you have to send them account statements telling them how many copies you've sold and offering them compulsory royalties, which are currently a flat rate. The US and Canada are the only countries that do a flat rate royalty. Everybody else, it's a percentage of the overall price. But you offer them those royalties. They can either take them or not take them, but your thing is legal and they can't say no. And the wonderful thing about that is, right now, with all types of copyrights, the publisher or the record label or whoever owns the rights can ask for whatever they want. This is horrible for things like YouTube, right? Because synchronization is its own separate right, and there's no set standard for it. People can be like, "Wow, you're trying to do a music video of some song that I own. I want $10,000," and you're like, "I don't have $10,000 for you." And they're like, "Well, sorry, the price is $10,000." Or they can just be like, "No," and you'll be like, "What about if I give you $10,000?" And they'll be like, "No." And that's really frustrating. So the compulsory license is this wonderful way to force somebody to agree to terms that have been standardized by Congress. And there are some moments where we've had some really grumpy publishers be like, "I'm not going to give you a license for that." And I'm like, "Yes, you are." And then they quickly turn to like, shit, okay, could you maybe use any other song? And I'm like, "No, sorry, that's the one that the artist has recorded. Let me go talk to them, but they're probably set since they already spent money on the recording." And that's kind of a sexy feeling. So that's probably the sexiest thing about copyright. The flat rate currently, it changes every couple of years. It's currently 9.1 cents for every song, except for songs over 5 minutes, where it's calculated at a rate of 1.75 cents per minute, like rounded up. So if you have a 6-minute song, it's like, I think, 10.5 cents. If you have a 7-minute song, it's 11, 12.25, that kind of thing. And these are all like fractional, pennies and things. So a lot of the time, we'll run into situations where, somebody is making less than a penny. And we've actually joked about like trying to transfer everybody's earnings into Bitcoin, which can be slashed up into like 18 decimal places so that people could actually get their like tenths of cents. But right now we currently hold on to tenths of cents until they make a cent, and then we give that.
Good question. Awesome. Next question. Yes? Anyone? Do you guys have questions? Yeah. Is this a hypothetical question?
I feel like I'm going to be answering a lot of these questions. Why don't I get myself out from under Josh? Thank you. It's a frequent thing that I have to do. Actually, we should tell the story about our very first office at some point. Speaking of being literally on top of each other. So, really good question. At what point does a fan work that uses, assumedly copyrighted characters and trademarked characters in some cases, but original content, original music, original stories, at what point does that become, legal? And the copyright law deliberately leaves sort of ambiguity between something called a derivative work and something called fair use, right? Fair use means that you can use somebody's copyrighted, or in some cases trademarked, stuff without having to compensate them, without having to ask for their permission. That your use is, fair. That you're saying, I've used this in such a minor way or in such a transformative way that that I can take this without, having to get permission from the copyright holder. And the reason that this is done is because copyright's original purpose is to encourage the creation of more works, right? So if you have a situation where, for example, you want to, what's a good example? The classic example is, Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes peeing on, various truck logos. And obviously, the guy who does Calvin and Hobbes hates that stuff. But he can't do anything about it because it's a parody of that character, right? A lot of the time, if you have, like, Mickey Mouse in, like, sexual situations, that's the thing that Mickey Mouse would never do. And Disney hates that crap. But they can't do anything about it because it would squash artistic freedom to be able to portray those characters in a negative light, right? A lot of the time, you have parody songs that directly sort of, I don't want to say hate on, but hate on, the original subject matter. Weird Al is an interesting situation. A lot of Weird Al's songs are not true parodies. In order to be a true parody song, you have to parody the material in the actual song itself. So, for example, Eat It is Michael Jackson's Beat It with lyrics about eating food and getting fat, right? And that's not actually a parody because the original song wasn't about food, and it's not actually parodying the musical material. It's pretty much copying it exactly. In fact, I think Slash did the guitar solo on Eat It as well, because he's such a Weird Al fan. But Weird Al is big enough that he can go to the Michael Jackson estate and he can be like, please give me the rights to create this derivative work. And they say, well, yeah, sure, you're Weird Al. Everybody loves your stuff. Conversely, Weird Al has a song called Achy Breaky Song, which is about Achy Breaky Heart. And it's don't play that song, that Achy Breaky song, that most annoying song I know. And if you play that song, I might blow up my radio. And so that's a direct parody of the song, because we can all agree that that song is pretty damn annoying. So that actually falls under true parody. I believe he got a license for that song anyway, just because that's his MO, but he wouldn't have had to. He would have been able to be protected by fair use. So to answer your original question, with a lot of these things with copyrighted characters in these different situations, it really comes down to whether or not the person making the new work feels that they're protected by fair use. There are certain things that are protected by fair use, such as journalistic criticism, which is, of course, very important to be protected by fair use. Things like parody. There's actually been several cases recently where we've expanded on what is protected by fair use. Like recently it was ruled that time shifting and space shifting recordings, all these startups that have like, well, you can take this TV program and you can, take it over to your iPad and you can play it on your iPad. And the copyright industry was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, we need royalties for that, that's a broadcast. And they were like, no, it's just taking the content and making it available on a different screen. And luckily the judges in that case ruled that it was in fact fair use. So you don't have to pay a separate royalty for that. Similarly, copies stored on your RAM disk, I think, when you stream something, a copy is briefly put on the RAM of your computer. And like ASCAP, which is a performing rights organization, was trying to sue for that and saying, wait a minute, that's a copy, those are royalties that need to be paid. And people are like, do you understand how RAM works? I can't get to that file even if I want to. It's in like pieces over here. And, yeah, right. I could take out my RAM chips, I could freeze them, I could grab the information off of them, and I could painstakingly reconstruct the file, but it's really not worth anybody's time to do that. Yeah, so, a lot of these things have been ruled fair use. Fair use is still a very nebulous category. In something like, Smash Opera, I think that definitely portrays the characters in a new way, and I think it very, not to blow my own horn in helping produce this project, but I think it makes a very good parallel between the original context of the characters and something entirely new. And of course it uses public domain opera material as the music, so it's more likely to be, safe than something that is just straight up, a copy of the actual like file of the Mario music with maybe some tweaks in it, and some dubstep wubs. That kind of thing. It's in using original sound recordings in your recordings where you start to get in real trouble. Yeah.
Cool. These are really good questions. Any more?
Sorry for talking for a long ass time.
Copyright's complicated, by the way. That's why we do it. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It would fall under either a derivative work where you would need a synchronization license, or it would fall under fair use, where you don't need a license at all. And most people who make machinima claim that what they're creating is fair use. I happen to agree with them, I'm a lawyer, but like,
Who's done that? Braxton did it once. I saw.
My dad has done that.
Your dad.
All I did, I posted on his thing, and I'm like, copyright doesn't work that way.
Awesome. So as you guys kind of alluded to, in addition to the licensing, we've worked with a lot of game composers to like release new soundtracks, worked with them. We do game music bundles. Yeah, you guys have any questions about that experience and who we've worked with or anything like that? No?
Yeah, tell me everything.
Yeah, I can't do that. You can be more specific.
She works at Loudr too.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I work at Loudr.
What do you do at Loudr?
What do I do at Loudr? What don't I do at Loudr? I work with Jesse and Sebastian very closely with operations and content management. So when you upload your music, we make sure that it's following our rules and that we license it if it needs it and that it distributes. Yes, oh no. Have you seen me on his Skype calls? You've seen the back, have you seen the back of my head before? That's me. Yes.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I was in the Smash Opera. Obviously, I'm in San Francisco with the Loudr crew. These guys are all in Pittsburgh, and so I had to rehearse with them from the Loudr office over like Skype or Google Hangouts, with Marge acting as my body double, and I just learned all the blocking from her basically. But so they've seen quite a lot of my office, or at least the back of Chloe's head.
Yep. Good time.
Which at least she's got cool hair.
Sexiest? Oh yeah, you have it.
Do I? Which one do you want? Define sexy. Crap, I don't know what I could talk about.
What are you allowed to talk about?
Yeah. Which one's sexy? Okay, so
Wait, I have the best one. I date one right here. Oh.
sweet. Thank you.
Brownie points for that girlfriend.
Yeah, there you go, girlfriend points. Okay, so we did the retro game music bundle, and that was a fun experience. Raise your hand first of all if you have music on Loudr in the room, because there's a few of you. If there's anybody here that has music on Loudr, mostly over here. Nice. So when we did this thing called the retro game music bundle, this was awesome for me because I grew up on the really old PC games. My face was glued to Myst and Doom, and like was making levels in Duke Nukem. I was crazy. I was that kid that like never went outside because I was just building Legos inside of video games for some reason. Anyway, so wrap around to like whatever year we did the retro game music last year, I think. And we had the opportunity to work with the Myst guys, Rand and Robin Miller, to have them kind of remaster the Myst soundtrack and put that out. And then one of you guys, I'm just gonna go for it. There's this guy named Bobby Prince who wrote a lot of really awesome music, I thought, when I was younger. And it was in video games like Doom, Duke Nukem. Every single Apogee game back then had this guy's music, and he basically was kind of my inspiration to do it. Also, who's played The Seventh Guest? 11th Hour? No? Maybe? Anybody? Oh, thank you. Cool. Sweet. Okay, I also really dug that game, and I was like the kid who took the CD and they put the soundtrack on the disc, the game disc, and I like would play that at Christmas time instead of Christmas music and drive my parents crazy. So it's like this like kind of grotesque MIDI little like soundtrack of like haunted house music. Yeah. Yeah. It like starts off with this crazy like chanting opera thing too, the choir of demons. It's amazing. Anyway, so we got to do the retro game music bundle, and we worked with Scott Miller at 3D Realms to kind of get all the licensing and everything. And the sexiest moment for me with video game composers today, hands down, is Bobby Prince calling us. And I'm like, yes, oh my God, this is the best day ever, and then chewing us out. So that was a really big disappointment. That was sexy. That's my taste. Judge me not.
We also released Jazz Jackrabbit.
Yeah, okay,
was that for the first time that it was released originally? And I got to do the album art for it, which was really awesome, and that's by Alexander Brandon. So we worked closely with him too, and Yeah. Yeah, and I did the Duke Nukem album art as well, which was awesome.
It's definitely worth mentioning, real quick, sorry dude. We had a lot of composers kind of come together to help us on those Duke Nukem albums. We did a Duke Nukem 3D album where Chris and Dan, the Hyperduck guys back there, literally remade like 90% of that soundtrack. And my heart was thus broken when we had to take it down. But we also worked with like, how many different people on the Duke Nukem Remix album? Okay, so does everybody know Vert? Good, respect. Vert took, what's Duke Nukem's name? The guy, John St. John. He took his voice recordings from Duke Nukem and made him like rap, bro it out your ass. If you can find it on SoundCloud and YouTube. I didn't tell you that, but you should, and it's amazing.
Yeah, these albums may still be floating around the internet if anybody is interested in downloading them. Yeah. So even though that stuff sort of went down with the retro game music bundle, we still got to work with people like Alex Brandon, people like the Fat Man, people like Robin Miller, and it was so incredibly cool, especially for slightly older gamers like Josh and I, to like get on the phone with Robin Miller, who was the music guy and one of the two guys for Myst, and like pick his brain. And to correspond with George Sanger, the Fat Man, and really to make Alex Brandon's day, because like we told him we got the rights for Jazz Jackrabbit, and he's like, I don't know how you guys did that. Like I've been trying to do that for years. It was a really cool experience making that happen.
Something said earlier they can't say no. That's because you're on the phone, buddy.
Well, that was a hard one because it had never been officially released, so they could have said no to that one.
That's true.
We just harangued them enough that they were like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting about this kind of compulsory, you have to release it sort of thing is it only counts for phono records, literally. It had to come out as a digital audio only download or as a physical audio CD. It being in the soundtrack of a video game that you played as a video game does not count. So if there is the notorious example, I guess, Twilight Princess of Zelda, which doesn't have a soundtrack CD released in America. Maybe it had like a small bonus disc where you a subset, but I don't know. But in order to license that, you have to work directly with Nintendo of America, and then in turn, you have to send faxes to Japan. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Oh, that sucks. One day. Yeah. So we have a really interesting work life. We're doing licensing, we're doing distribution, we're trying to work with artists to release new content. At the same time, we're also trying to like juggle this tightrope of publishers and how they, do this archaic business, and really, really trying to make it so eventually you guys, the artists, will be as working directly with the songwriters as possible of the stuff that you're covering, because it turns out songwriters tend to really like covers. It's the publishers that get a little weird about it, except for the case of Prince, I guess. But hey, he can't say no. Yeah. I don't.
You guys know, but Prince had an album that he made like 50,000 copies of, and right before he was going to release them, he had them locked up in the warehouse forever because he thought that they contained evil. And he had Prince money, so he was able to just pay off the wholesale cost for making those 50,000 albums. But there's a warehouse somewhere that has 50,000 copies of a Prince album sitting in it, like, sort of Fern Gully style, all kind of like locked up in like a thing, because Tim Curry's going to pop out and terrify all of us.
Do you want to stand up?
I just like wolves. So I was trying to come up with the logo for Loudr, and I was doing, your typical music stuff like headphones, speakers, all these sorts of things, and I was drawing in my notebook and doing it on the computer, and I just was getting frustrated. I didn't want to be typical, and I wanted something that you could feel happy about. So I just kind of drew this little triangular dog woof in my notebook, and then I took it into the computer and tweaked it a lot and showed the whole team the array of logos, and obviously you're like, you have to go for the wolf, and it just represents like, singing, the wolves sing at night, and sort of the like best friend attitude wolves and dogs have. So it reflects our brand, and it all worked out. It was kind of synchronicity.
I found that the logo over time has reflected us as well, because we have to be strong like a pack, even though
Yeah.
we're hungry and vicious. So
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah.
There's a lot of strong personalities on the Loudr team. There's a lot of strong arguments that happen.
It's all out of our love for you guys. I think most of us are musicians too, so we all come from very definitely all from creative backgrounds, if not just music. So that definitely adds into what are these guys doing? Woohoo!
Sure. I play a little bit of piano. I compose.
He arranges beautiful piano music.
Okay. So back in the early days of YouTube, there was a time in which 1 million views was the biggest thing ever. I don't know how many of you were around in 2008 on YouTube when there was the top 100 videos in the music category. I was there. I was spot number 7. I was really popular once. No, I recorded a whole medley of Kingdom Hearts themes on piano, 17 minutes, in the early days of YouTube, and that kind of started my entire video game cover song gig that I haven't really stopped doing since, and actually got me into an entire video game music scene. So that was pretty cool. Now I compose, I orchestrate. I'm working on a project called Project Estati, which is basically Kingdom Hearts reorchestrations. You may see a trend. The Kingdom Hearts thing just kind of keeps going. And yeah, there's never quite enough time to perfect your craft and play piano for all hours of the day. Day job, I guess, sort of prohibits that. Keeps it fun. We should tune it. Thank you.
I just started getting into musicals in high school and did the vocal ensemble chorus stuff, and then I took voice lessons for 8 years or something. But so I'm a singer, but yet at the same time there's some opera trained singer in our office, and there's some other people like Jesse who are really good at singing, so I'm a singer kinda.
Awesome. My background is I was clearly addicted to video game music when I was younger. I carried that into an excuse to take piano lessons, and then I was in orchestra. And I'd be in the back of the orchestra, I'd be like, when are we playing some video game music? And he's like, I don't know what that, go away. So go back to your bass, is what he said. And go play your 4 notes in Pachelbel's Canon. I guess sometime around when I was 13 maybe, I thought it'd be cool to make video games. If you can't do art, and I can't do art, that's very hard. So I got into this community called the Click community, maybe Click and Play and Multimedia Fusion. And so I made some shitty games with MIDIs, and I spent way more time on the MIDIs, obviously. But then I had some friends that would caught a hold of me, and they were like, hey, your game's utter crap, but it didn't sound bad. So I was lucky enough to meet David Selesco at that time in that community, and a bunch of game developers like Derek Yu, who made Aquaria, and then Spelunky. And they just gave me a lot of confidence, and then I just started talking like I knew what I was doing. I came to MAGFest and really did that. And then I started getting gigs. So now I write music for Mo Yang on the project Scrolls that Chris and Dan also do audio for. I'm doing a game with Adult Swim right now called Oblitus that's coming out very soon, and a game called Chromaya just came out on Steam. And then the only other thing I guess of note is that I helped start the Game Music Bundle in 2011 with Danny B, Big Giant Circles, a few OCR guys, Zircon, and that did pretty well for us, and that's actually how I ended up meeting the Loudr crew. They wanted to put some stuff on a Game Music Bundle, and I was like, let's just work together. This is hard. So we did.
How do I follow that up?
I don't know.
So I'm not really musical per se. I'm an avid dabbler in all things creative, so I just constantly move from one thing to the next, and I haven't stuck with one and perfected it and made it my craft, but I do enjoy it. And currently, what I want to do is learn ukulele, so I've been trying to do that for the last year. Tons of fun, but yeah, I'm sure next year it'll be a totally different, instrument?
I joined a boys choir when I was 6, and I sang with that till I was ready to graduate high school, and then I went away to college and I got a music degree. I participated in the opera program, and that's where I met a lot of the people that I work at Loudr with, was in that opera program. 2 of the other founders of the company who aren't here today were involved in that. One was the rehearsal accompanist, and one was sort of the baritone soloist for just everything. He was a really cool guy. And then after that, I came back to the Bay Area. I started working at what was at that time called Acapella Records, and it was a record label for acapella music that included licensing, because of course acapella artists do 95% cover songs. And that was actually how we started on the licensing front of things. I had to teach myself copyright, but my passion is as a singer. I'm also working at the boys choir that I grew up in. I'm in charge of the tenor bass group, and actually this year is my very first year getting to choose the music for our spring season. So we're singing things like Baba Yetu, and I actually got the rights successfully to be able to perform the barbershop quartet piece from BioShock Infinite, so we're going to do that too, which is really cool. I think that's the first time a choir has done it legally.
Cool. Now that you guys know a little bit more, are there any other questions? Awesome. Emma.
Yeah. Yes. Ah, Jesus. All right, that's a story.
So, BioShock is made by Take-Two Games. And I have a friend who works at Take-Two Sports, so he gave me the contact information for somebody at the business department of Take-Two. So I email them, and I hear back that they don't represent the rights. Go talk to Take-Two Interactive, which is their parent company. So I email that person, and I finally hear back, oh, we don't represent the rights. Go talk to Brian Wilson's management. So I hunt down the information for Brian Wilson's management, and I go talk to them at Warner Chappell. And they say, well, we don't have it. We shoot all our stuff out to Hal Leonard, Sheet Music Corporation. And I'm like, great, I've dealt with Hal Leonard before because I've licensed, sheet music for my boys choir. But I've never licensed anything that didn't exist. It was always like, I'm going to buy 16, 17, copies of this. So I go to Hal Leonard and I'm like, what would it take for me to get a special arrangement license for this, version? And they say, well, we don't actually represent that anymore. We've kicked it out to a company called Tresona. So I go to Tresona, which has like the worst interface ever, and I pay for things and try to get the rights secured. And so several weeks later, they finally came back to me and they're like, okay, you have a license. And I'm like, seriously? And they're like, yeah, no, go ahead, make your 45 copies and do it with your men's choir. I'm like, awesome. So yeah, it's sometimes copyright involves ping-ponging back and forth between several people. Sometimes you get stuck between 2 people who are both like, he's got the rights, and he's like, nah, he's got the rights. In even worse situations, sometimes you end up with 2 companies that are like, I own this. No, I also own this. Which was sort of the Bobby Prince situation. We had one person who was like, oh yeah, I can give you these rights. And then he was like, wait a minute, what the hell, guys? And we were like, he gave us the rights, Unfortunately, you get caught in the middle of stuff like that all the time. And it's especially scary when you have major music publishers like Sony and Universal, both of whom are claiming to own 60% of a composition. And you're like, that makes 120%, guys. Please fight amongst yourselves. Don't include me on any of these emails. They're really scary. But yeah, that's a really good question. Seabass can talk about that.
Sheet music's pretty exciting. To answer the question, yes. Do we want to expand it to sheet music? I would love to. I actually did, since I do a lot of arrangement myself and orchestrations and sort of not publish those anywhere on the internet by myself, I've been trying to get licenses. For example, 4 or 5 years ago I did arrangements for some music from How to Train Your Dragon, which has a phenomenal score. John Powell's just a genius. And I was trying to get one of my arrangements published so I could sell it and recoup some of the expenses. And ended up trying to find around. It's like do I contact DreamWorks about this? Do I contact, their publisher or their sub-publisher or their agent or administrator, or maybe this other publishing firm who's a law firm who represents these certain rights on behalf of the sub-publisher's publisher parent company? It's a really exciting goose change. Yep. The issue is mostly that there is no technology behind it. It's mostly just like papers filed away in some cabinet somewhere that someone long forgot about. So in the U.S., actually, there are essentially two companies who control a lot of the sheet music rights. So music rights as a whole is pretty fractured in that I think there's 6 different rights, generally speaking. There's streaming and print and performance and mechanicals and a bunch of other stuff. Jesse knows more. But for print, there's 2 companies essentially, Hal Leonard and Alfred, who administer a lot of the rights. So that includes, duplication rights, ability to create derivative arrangements, etc., etc. So I emailed them, finally found out, it's okay, this is the contact, I'm going to get a license, and after sort of following up, every other week for 14 months, I finally heard back. And it's okay, you will need to pay this amount up front, you have to buy licenses. There are certain restrictions with, if you want to distribute the sheet music online, for example, you have to make sure that people can only print 1 copy. So if you've ever used musicnotes.com to print sheet music, you may have encountered there are crazy interfaces, you can only print 1 copy. It's licensing. Usually if you run into complications with music, it's because of licensing. It's horrific. When you have to build a thing that prevents people from printing a PDF more than once, you're doing something wrong. But I eventually got the license, so I'm allowed to legally sell 55 digital copies of my arrangement for no more than $2.
But if I want the 56th copy?
There is no 56th copy, because it doesn't exist after that, because all the digital copies have been depleted. Sheet music, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
I'll let Jesse speak to
Great,
it because he
thanks.
knows best. But yes,
Yeah, interestingly, I did a copyright panel here at MAGFest last year, and we talked about some copyright hacks that you can take advantage of. There are certain things like if you want to protect an arrangement that you've made of somebody else's work, and you don't care about owning the arrangement, but you just want it to be able to exist as a legal entity. Let's say you're a band, or in this case, I think it was an orchestra. It was an orchestra that only performed live. They had this arrangement. They wanted to make their arrangement legal so that they could perform it live. There's no provision in copyright law for creating an arrangement so that you can perform it. You're just not allowed to do that, right? You are allowed to perform a work in your own style, but you're not allowed to have written down any of those notes or anything. It's just something that you have to spontaneously come up with. And as you're an orchestra, that doesn't really work because people like having parts to read from. So when you create an audio recording, like a phono record or any kind of audio permanent reproduction, whether it be on CD or on download, part of the compulsory license that I was talking about earlier is that you have the right to create an arrangement in your own style for the purpose of making that recording. So one thing you can do is get everybody together for the purpose of making a studio recording, which can just be on a nice mic in somebody's house. Give them all their parts that you've made, make that recording, and then that arrangement is allowed to exist, and you can then take that sheet music and play it live if you want to. So that's one of those sort of workaround things. Another thing, if you have a song that uses a copyrighted melody but has original lyrics by you, or vice versa, you take whatever portion you created and you register it as a separate work. In the case of lyrics, you would register it as a poem. in cases of music, you would register those original notes as a non-lyricized melody, and then you would put it together with that other person's work. And this will help you prevent situations where, I don't know if you know, but Jonathan Colton had this really fantastic version of Baby Got Back that was in an episode of Glee, and Glee basically stole his arrangement. But they could legally do that because he hadn't done anything to protect it, he hadn't separately copyrighted it. If instead he had created an original song with those notes, and then repurposed those notes with the Baby Got Back lyrics, he could have had a claim against his prior composition. So there are things like that. As much as you can separate the original elements of your work and copyright those, you can protect the elements of your work that don't contain anybody else's work.
If you just created an original song, what steps can you take to copyright your song?
That was a good song. So in the US and most other countries, copyright is automatic. You don't have to register anything in order to get copyright. Copyright just automatically exists from the moment that you create the work. Now it's on you to prove when that was, right? So whatever the date is on your digital file, or whatever date you have on the manuscript that you created. A lot of people believe that you have to send an envelope to yourself, with the materials inside. That's not actually true. You don't need to do that. You automatically get copyright. You can do it, but it doesn't actually do anything. A court won't be like, well, clearly you've done this envelope sending thing. The best thing that you can do is to register it with the US Copyright Office. It costs about $35, and you get a nice, official registration with your name and your contact information, and this is how people get in touch with you if they want to use your work or get permission to use your work. If anybody has original works that were not created as works for hire, I recommend that you do that. Works for hire, a lot of the people that work in video game companies and things, they sign these contracts that anything they create in the course of their job is owned by the company, and of course those are not directly owned by you as the composer, which kind of sucks. Yeah. Just do your best to negotiate that out of your contract, because being able to have the rights to do stuff with your content afterward is really great, especially because the company that you most likely work for, at least if they're a major video game company, they're not set up as a music publisher. They don't understand that the music can be separated from their game. They don't understand that the art can be separated. And one of the things that we do, one of the challenges we have with these video game publishers, is to convince them that they, yes, are in fact music publishers, and yes, can make money off of these things if they allow other people to use those works.
Just talk. I'm just gonna talk. You said as a creator specifically, so I was just wondering, do you have a more specific use case, or are there other creators in here that are creating original work on behalf of a larger work, like a video game soundtrack? None of us. Cool. Go home, Braxton.
Go.
Do you have a question? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was actually going to ask, going off of the indie game world, want to separate it and put out a soundtrack through Loudr or something. What happens if you have the revenue share 50-50 split with the entity who owns the
That's a good question. You can't automatically do that, and they won't automatically be cool with it, even though it is a cool thing to do. You have to, when you start working with somebody, sign a contract. That's the #1 advice I can give. It doesn't have to be crazy. You just have to have a mutual agreement about what you're doing and how you're doing it in writing. Yep. And the basic 3 things that I would always do is say, yes, this is a work for hire. Yes, you can use it exclusively in whatever case you're doing, and I want to own my rights to my music, to at least to distribute, at the very least. If not, also, as Jesse was saying, receive royalties on behalf of derivative works and covers. But it's very important that you actually write those things out and discuss that with somebody before you get started. Because, and Chris and Dan can talk about this too, it's so important to have ownership of your music and actually talk about it. And when your game developer that you're working with is sitting there saying, oh, love what you're doing, but I don't want you to be able to do what's going to help you as a person and as an artist, they're not really trying to work with you. They're really kind of taking advantage of you. Even if it is a big fat check, what's more important to you at the end of the day, your big fat check or your career that you can sustain if you had owned your rights?
I feel like you strayed from his question.
Did I strain from your question too much?
Are you wondering what happens if there's more
Success.
But I retain my right to, put out the soundtrack however I chose. And I'm saying in the case of Loudr, how would that work?
It's a louder specific question.
That just went over your head.
Whatever.
Josh just doesn't. That's fine. So we do. Actually, I'm not in like distribution, but as far as I know, we do earning splits. So you'd be able to set up 50-50 to receive half the revenue, and then he would also, through Loudr, receive the other half, right?
We've. So the question was if we can split revenue, and we've given the amount of like tiny little increments of payments that we have to do just for publishers. We've gotten really good at taking chunks of money and dividing it up. God knows how many ways. So that's actually one of the things that I don't think any other distributor does at the moment. So like if you do a collaboration, usually it's like, okay, I guess I'll go to, this distributor here, I'll get my money, I'll take the entire tax burden, and I'll just, every month I'll just send money off to someone else. Or like if you're doing a massive collaboration with a bunch of other people, it, becomes like spreadsheet magic territory, and you sit there like accounting percentages, and it gets really exciting, but I guess we can take care of you on Loudr. Taxes are fun.
Most companies, just like going to the microphone as it comes ever closer. So most companies are not like actively trying to screw you. They just want to make sure that they have the rights that they need to do what they need to do, because they don't want to run into a situation where it's like, oh man, it's time to make the 25th anniversary of this game. Let's go get the soundtrack. We actually only got the rights for the original version, so now we're gonna have to go back to the composer and negotiate, and do all kinds of stuff, or like, we want to run a commercial for this game. Can we use an excerpt from the soundtrack? And they need to be able to answer yes to those questions. So that's most of the time why they do the work for hire thing. A better strategy is for you to talk to them when you're doing your contract negotiations and say, I will give you the right to do whatever you want, but I want to retain ownership. Work for hire is really a transfer of ownership. And if you, as the composer, are retaining ownership, even if you're giving away non-exclusive rights to a company to do whatever they want with your soundtrack, and you're not making any residuals off of any of their activity, it's still ultimately a better situation for you, because there will be other third parties, hopefully, in the future, that will want to cover your songs, that will want to use your music in other contexts, and they'll probably contact you directly. We always start by directly contacting the composer if we know who they are or how to find them, and they'll usually refer us to their game company. But it's always better to work directly between composer and artist, because I think that creates a much stronger ecosystem. I think that's probably why a lot of us are here at this convention. I don't like it. Grant Kirkhope is like the most awesome about that. We're like, hey, somebody else covered some of your work. And he's like, wow, this is incredible. Yeah.
Hi, Alex. Woo! Do you have a question for us, Alex? Woo!
You got the crazy hair, man.
I got the great. I think it's our hair that makes us so awesome. And yep, that's it. There you go. That's it. It's all magic in the hair.
Nailed that one.
Thanks. The one question I get to answer is about my hair.
Sort of. We are awesome. Because we get to work with each other in this like 8 to 10 person team. We're slowly growing, but everyone is really connected through the music, through just friendship. We're all sort of like in the same age range, like the same stage of life, and like we just really connect. So we have fun at work, and we are nice to each other, and we like are nice to the people we work with. Therefore, so we don't yeah, it's just awesome. Stumbling over my words in Seabass.
It's good. It's good. Stumbling over the microphone. Like, oh, I get the microphone for this. Because interacting with musicians is probably one of the most magical experiences you can have, which is why MAGFest exists. And I just love you guys. That's all. Nailed it.
Any other questions? Is there gonna be another question? I don't know if this is a top thing, but definitely having good design helps. So like really great typography. No, I'm not saying that, but even just if you're doing design, go simple and like make what you're saying clear. And that's my little tip, but Chloe can speak more to your question.
That's a really good one, actually. Design is important. It's like branding yourself. It's the first thing they'll see, you know, that's what they'll connect with. But consistency, so I see a lot of people that have a Twitter, have a Facebook, have a YouTube station, and do all this stuff, and then they don't have the same name on all of it, and that's how people are going to find you. You know, they're going to Google, and I even have to do that every day for our artists because I promote everyone. I market our artists, and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to tag them in this tweet, and I have to go find you, and it's hard because you like have no consistency, and you're just like pretty princess number 2, and I'm like, wait, no. Number 3, sorry, Josh. It was Josh the other day. So consistency and having a presence on all of those platforms. You don't have to maintain it all the time, but have one that exists because you have no clue like who uses what. If someone uses Tumblr, just have one that's there with a link to whatever you want them to go to. So having just a small presence and directing them where you want to go if you're not going to look at your Twitter every day. And collaborations is huge. I mean, in the YouTube community specifically, but when you collaborate with another artist, they have a totally different fan base than you usually, and when you're exposed to their fan base, those people are going to become fans of you usually, and you've now just doubled that, and you're doing the same thing for everyone else, and collaborations is just a great exposure. And I'm actually going to say this: cover songs. I know we're at, video game music is usually, who got big on cover songs? Thank you, Braxton. The great thing about cover songs, and I know a lot of people think it's a cop-out of some sort, do original music, that's amazing, but when you do a cover song and you've taken something that someone already loves, made it your own, and if I love, I don't know, I'm going to say Katy Perry because I always use her as an example. If I'm like, I love Katy Perry, that song Roar, man, I just want to listen to it all day. And I all of a sudden find Alexander Brandon's, I'm like searching Roar, and I'm like, Alexander Brandon did a cover of Roar? Please do it now, I've called you out. And I'm like, what is this? And it's some cool chip tune, I don't know, like doing some crazy video game as Katy Perry song, and I'm like, this is amazing, who's this Alexander Brandon guy? And I look at all your other stuff, and now you've gained me as a fan because I discovered you through something I already love. And so I think that's huge as well. Good question.
For you specifically, Alex, and really anybody in the room who's writing music, talk about your music. Yes. Like no one's just gonna be like, you're a musician, let me listen to your stuff, and you're like, oh, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, but don't be that guy who like goes to a party and puts your music in. Don't be that guy. But like, be vocal and be proud, but not overbearing. it's really easy, especially for a starting musician, to talk with this attitude of like, oh, I did this, what do you think? Like, I don't know, it could be better. No, be like, I'm really proud of this. I worked for weeks on this. What do you think? And get people's opinion. Ask questions. You want to engage with your audience. You don't want to just be like, listen, buy it. Thanks. You want to be like, I did this, you know, I'm really proud of it. What do you think of it? The next time I make something, what should that be? What would you like to hear? Because you actually gave me some of your time. Let me give some of my time back to you as an artist. And I think that's what really builds a relationship between fans and the musicians.
Engage.
To actually tell a short specific story, we ran a thing a while ago called the Game Music Festival, which was based around a game music bundle, but we also had interviews with, you know, composers and various artists and things like that. One of my favorite interviews that came out of that was one with Chris Christodoulou, who is the composer for Risk of Rain. And he was like, you know, I composed all of this music based on the color palette for each level. And I put everything together, and it's this fantastic interview. It's on SoundCloud. You guys can go hear it. But I mean, it's him talking about this aspect of his music that totally makes sense now that I've heard him talk about it. But I never would have made that connection. And you know, I went and bought that soundtrack like 3 times over just because I wanted to support that kind of creativity. You know, so the more genuine you can be with your community, and the more open you can be about your compositional process, the more you can let people into, you know, the brain that comes up with these themes, like, the better you can do for everybody.
Yeah, and they'll connect with that.
Yeah.
If you're working with like a game developer as well, try to get them to talk about your music. That helps a lot.
I don't know if you know, but video games tend to contain music.
Anyway,
Yeah.
good question.
What you got?
So I guess going off of that, what is the best way to get involved in collaborations on Loudr?
Specifically on Loudr?
Just like if you don't really have, if you want to get involved and you don't really have anything specific in mind that you want to start up, what's the best way to kind of get into the community?
I don't know that you're necessarily going to get into the community through Loudr, but after you've found that collaboration, Loudr is a great tool. And my advice to find anyone is, I mean, where's your presence? Are you on? What's your like biggest online presence? If you were to, like, are you at Twitter, Facebook? Are you video game music? Okay. MAGFest. Who wants to collaborate right now? So what I would say is find your community, which is obviously video game music, and just start conversations with artists that maybe inspire you or have similar sounds as you, or maybe has a really good tangential sound to you. You know, like, oh, it'd be crazy if I had a sexy saxophone in my music. Maybe we should figure something out, you know, and do something, experiment. And I think just starting a conversation with someone will, you know, you guys will just start communicating. I haven't had this experience, but I think, yeah, like you guys, I just feel like you know, you guys jammed last night. I got to listen to half the people in this room, and it was beautiful. And I'm like, that's how stuff happens. And then you're like, maybe we just record this. I don't know. And then you know, you release it, and I think that's how it goes.
One of the best parts about MAGFest is the performers that come here, especially as a composer. So last year we were doing some jam sessions, and that's how I met Kristen, who I actually had work with me on a soundtrack and record some beautiful Irish whistle and oboe. But use the people that you meet. Don't use them. Work with them, because they're mostly really amazing people here. I don't think that who's met like a spoiled egg at MAGFest. Anybody? No, good. That's right, because it's MAGFest, and everybody who comes to MAGFest is awesome, quote unquote. Everyone. But seriously, take advantage of this. Go to Jam Space and Jam Pod and Space Jam and whatever the other one is. There's literally 4 of them. Go listen to people, get inspired by performance, get inspired by other people's, their energy and what they're doing, and try to just wedge yourself into it. Yeah.
Common interests help a lot, like picking parts, finding other people who like picking parts, and collaborating with projects.
Speaking really quickly as somebody who is a performer primarily and not so much a composer, there are a lot of performers who want to play original music, who want to appear on video game soundtracks. It would be like most of our, you know, dreams come true to have our instruments appear or our voices appear on various, you know, game soundtracks and things. So
together so well.
Yeah. I made that noise. Okay, so, Braxton, one last question, but it's like 1:06. We're pretty over, so. This is the worst. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. We're Loudr. Come hang out with us. We were gonna party like animals. That's what we do. Party like. Well, some of us. Thanks, guys.